if America ever turns away from God, if it ever drives him out, empties the house will not remain empty. The spirits will return.
If you don't deal with that, if you don't stand against that, it will come back.
That's right.
And it'll be much worse.
That's right.
Because you've sort of opened the gates, in a sense.
Yes.
Hey, folks, as promised, our friend Rabbi Jonathan Cahn is back with us in the studio. Look, he's right here. Welcome.
Hey, always great to be here.
Listen, it's like you go big. This book, you have a new book out, just brand new, called The Return of the Gods. So the first question I have to ask you, because it's a very provocative title, what is the meaning of this, The Return of the Gods, this brand new book?
Yeah, this I have to say, Eric, this is the most explosive book I've ever written. I think if you read it, you see that.
I know because I read it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pretend that I don't remember anything in it. I'll talk less if I shut up.
Yeah, this is the opening of a mystery that's behind everything, the transformation, what is transforming our culture, our children, touching the Supreme Court, everything going back to the Bible and going back to the ancient tablets of Mesopotamia. And the first thing, and you asked, is, we hear about the gods. Could there be something actually real to the gods? The gods are fiction, mythology, but could there be something real to it?
Okay, now, to be clear, when you're talking about the gods, you're talking about the gods of ancient Egypt, the gods of ancient Greece and ancient Rome. If we're talking about Zeus and Aphrodite, we're talking about Marduk. We're talking about all of these gods. So you and I, as believers in the Bible, we would say those gods are fiction, and yet...
Yes.
Not really.
Yeah. There's another realm to it, and the thing is, what if there's something real about them, and what if they are at work now? The entities or principalities, the Bible speaks about it. What if they're at work? They have returned because we've opened the door. What if they are at work in America? And what if they're transformed? What if it's behind all what if it's affecting every one of us in one way or the other? So here's the kind of setup, because you said it's provocative. Yeah, the Bible speaks about gods all the time, and they are false. Yet in Deuteronomy, it says that they worship the gods, and the word it uses is the word shedim in Hebrew. Shedim means entities or spirits. It comes again in the Psalm. It says that they offer their children to the shedim. These are spirits. Now, this was translated into Greek, and the rabbis came up with a word for it, and the word was daimonia, which is used by Paul when he says the pagans are sacrificing to the daimonia, which is daimonia, we get the word demon or demonic. So what the Bible's saying from the beginning, it's not just fantasy. There's a spiritual world. It says we war against principalities. So all over, if you look back in the pagan world, everybody was worshiping God. It's kind of a strange phenomenon.
Well, we have to be clear, folks. We're talking about false gods with lowercase g. So we want to be clear. But we also want to say this is what the Bible says. These are false gods. They are real at the same time that they're false. In other words, they exist, but they would tempt us to worship them.
Yes.
But to worship them is not to worship God or anything affiliated with God, but to worship those that are at war with the God of Scripture.
Exactly. And look, what does the Bible call the enemy? It says the God of this world. These are false gods. And so everyone was worshiping gods. And the thing is that if these are spirits behind these things, which there are, then it means the pagan world was given to the spirits. And that's why when you look at pagan culture, you actually see all the signs of possession. The high priests, they were shaking, they were these were possessed cultures. Now, the only thing that changed it, and the reason why we grew up in a totally different world, is because of the gospel. Because the Lord came, he has the power to cast out spirits. When he sent the disciples into the Roman Empire, it's a clash of spirits. It's a clash of principalities. The reason why believers were thrown to the lions is because they refused to worship the gods of Rome. And so you have a war there. And so the ultimate thing is that ultimately the power of the gospel, they got rid of the gods. The reason why we're not filled with gods in the West is because that's what happened. Zeus, all that, the temples were gone. But if the gods are driven out, it means that the spirits were driven out. So this is the greatest mass exorcism in the history of the world, and that is what makes the West unique. But here's the catch, and this is something the Lord gave a parable. And the parable is of the parable of the spirit leaves a man, goes out, goes and finds no place to go, says, I'm going to go back to my house, goes back to the guy or the house, says that he finds it swept and basically empty. So I'm going to get my friends. Goes back, gets 7 more spirits more evil. And the Lord says, well, so the latter state is worse than the first. But then, this is what people miss. They think he's just talking about a guy. He's not. It says, so it will be with this generation. He's not talking about just one person. He's talking about an entire generation. And the thing is that there's the ultimate thing is this. If you apply that now to the biggest picture, if our culture has been exorcised, the gods were gone, the spirits were driven out, the warning is, if the West, if America, ever turns away from God, if it ever drives him out, empties the house will not remain empty. The spirits will return. The, quote, gods of the ancient will return to do what they did then, but now to a, quote, Christian nation. And that is exactly what we have been witnessing for the last half century. Why is it so crazy? What is possessing America? This is possessing America.
Okay. Did you get that, folks? If you didn't get it, we're just going to say it over and over again, because this is at the very heart of our current reality. We are living at a time, and you say it, on the one hand, it's provocative, but it's simply true. Yeah. We're not living in a secular world. We're not living in a world where there's no spirit realm. But there are many Christians who almost live in that world. They say, well, I believe in God, but they don't seem to understand that the God that they say they believe in talks about demonic forces, talks about false gods, about satanic entities that take different guises in different civilizations. So we know that whether it's in Babylon or Egypt or Assyria or Greece or on and on and on, people worship these entities, and they are gods, small g. They're false gods not because they don't exist, but because they are false. They point away from the truth, which is God. But Jonathan, the reason this is provocative is because much of the church today has, in a sense, participated in the kind of secularization of things that we say, well, we'll talk about God, but we won't talk about that. And because in the last 50 or so years, American Christians have shrunk from dealing with the dark spiritual reality, as you just described and as Jesus describes, if you don't deal with that, if you don't stand against that, it will come back.
That's right.
And it'll be much worse.
That's right.
Because you've sort of opened the gates, in a sense.
Yes.
Folks, I hate to interrupt, but I just don't want you to miss any of the content we're putting out on here. We've just got some amazing stuff. So would you do yourself a favor and hit the subscribe button so we can make sure you don't miss anything? I promise you, great stuff coming up. Hit the subscribe button. Thank you. Welcome back. Talking to Jonathan Cahn. The movie is The Harbingers of Things to Come. You can see it at salemnow.com. So, Jonathan, you were just revealing what you talk about in the film. You call it the mystery of the island, and you were referring to the great John Winthrop, the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, how he would have this kind of retreat on Governor's Island, which is in Massachusetts, which is in Boston Bay. Right in the harbor. And he would face Boston and pray for Boston. Yeah. Okay, now the punchline.
And in doing so, he's praying for the whole civilization that became America.
That's right. That's right.
And so he also the one, for those who didn't hear, who warned America, do not turn from God. If you follow God, you're going to be the most blessed people. If you turn away, then judgments come. So what happened to John Winthrop? What happened to the island of Winthrop, John Winthrop? The island of John Winthrop was subsumed, and in the 20th century became an airport. The airport is Logan Airport, the very place where the planes took off on 9/11 and headed to New York City, on the island of the man who warned America. It all started there.
This is getting really eerie now. No, it is amazing. These things are absolutely amazing. And it's amazing to me that God has chosen you to reveal these things, because you're not making them up. You're just discovering what already exists.
Yeah. It's there. That's how, Eric, it's interesting because this is the only interview pretty much, that I do, that's in Lower Manhattan, where all these things, this all centers here. The Harbingers are here. We're here. I was standing at the ground zero, and that's where it all started. Something said, the Spirit said, look, I was looking at this tree that if I said, there's something you have to find, you have to seek it, and that's how it all began. I could never reproduce any of it. Even the process, I don't even know how it happened.
What year was that when you saw the tree?
Well, when I saw it, I believe it was 2004. the end of 2004.
Okay.
That's when I saw it, and that's when it all started. In my,
So
beginning.
you got this idea that you need to look into this.
Yes.
Now, remind us, for
Yeah.
people who haven't read the book or forgot, what was that tree? Because we're talking about ground zero.
Yes.
So this is where anybody who knows history in New York knows it started at the bottom. I
Yes.
mean, Wall Street.
Yes.
This was a Dutch settlement, and it moved up the island. So in the colonial times. When the country was founded, when Washington was inaugurated for the first time, it all happened right there.
Right there. He's the one. I mean, and you talk about Winthrop. He also gave a warning. He also said, he says, the smiles of heaven are not going to stay on a nation that disregards God's order and rules of right. He on that very inauguration, and so he's doing that. By the way, since you mentioned that, when 9/11 came, a shockwave came from 9/11. Struck the foundation on which Washington gave that warning and cracked the foundation where America was born.
That's Federal Hall.
That's Federal Hall. Yeah, happened right there. And so the other thing about Washington is that he led the first government from that place to a place to dedicate America to God. That is, and that place, where America was dedicated to God on that first day, ends up being ground zero. And that is one of the biblical templates that it returns to the place. Well, on that place, you mentioned what that was. On that place, in that courtyard of St. Paul's Chapel, was this tree, the sycamore. Now the Bible won't go into all, but the Bible, and the Harbinger warns. It says one of the things that happens in Israel's judgment. He says the sycamore is struck down. So there was literally a sycamore, ground zero, struck down. That's what I saw. That's what started it all. That's what I saw. Then it says, but the people say, we will plant this other tree in its place, strong. We're coming back with a stronger tree. And so 2 years later, that tree appears, the biblical tree, it's called an Eerie tree, appears in the ground. They have a ceremony, and that is another harbinger, because they do exactly, they're not trying to do it. They're just doing it, and
they're unwittingly recreating this ancient history, this template, because the sycamore's knocked down at St. Paul's, and people have visited St. Paul's.
Yeah.
Which is in Lower Manhattan. But you're saying a sycamore tree was knocked down, and they decide, okay, we'll plant another tree.
Yeah.
What do they plant?
Well, they plant a specific tree. It's a biblical Eerie tree, which is translated cedar, same tree as in the ancient template of judgment. So they plant the same tree on replacing the sycamore, same thing. But here's a follow-up, which is in the movie, because this happened after I wrote The Harbinger. One of the signs of the Bible of warning a nation that's in judgment is the withering away of a tree. We know that from that. Well, what happened to that tree of hope? It's called the tree of hope, America coming back. It started to wither away. And whatever they tried to do, they couldn't stop it. They tried to, they put new ground. It didn't matter. The whole thing was like cursed, withered away. Finally, that tree was struck down, actually fell on a Hebrew holy day. It fell on Passover. That night, the moon turned blood red, another sign from the Bible, but a symbol. When the Eerie tree, which is the cedar, in the Bible, when that falls, you see them again and again in the Bible. That's speaking about the warning of a fall of a nation. That happened after the Harbinger. That's one of the things I show in the movie, and people can actually see it.
Well, I mean, so it sounds like we get these warnings and warnings, like the nation is falling. So where do you see hope?
Oh, the only hope is not, well, number one, God is the only hope. As long as there's God, there's hope. There may be a time where he says, stop praying for these people, and sometimes you feel like, are we at that point? But the thing is that God always, one of the things when we read 2 Chronicles 7:14, interesting, if you read the verse before, it says, if I send a plague on the land, and then it says, if my people who are called by my name. So God shakes the nation, but people say, is there hope? I said, well, if there wasn't hope, why would there be shaking? If there wasn't hope, why'd there be warning? Why you warn someone if there's no hope? So as long as there is, but there's a big if. First of all, it's my people, because if you alluded to this before, if the church was doing what it was supposed to be doing, if we were the light we were supposed to be, it could never get this dark. If we were the salt, it could never get this rotten. So the thing is, it really lies first with us. So yeah, and there is a weakness in the church right now. There is a dilution in the church right now. And it's kind of like nobody's saying it, everybody's intimidated to say anything. Well, then how are we going to be the light? We have to be bold. We have to be like Elijah's. We have to rise up. We have to be the truth. And if there's anything in our life, first of all, we have to get it out. If it's not there, then we can pray for revival. Then we can be agents for revival. Listen, Eric, my feeling is, and you're in this, we're all in this together, that this could be the most exciting time because it allows us to shine. You talk about Bonhoeffer. We wouldn't see how great this testimony was if it wasn't so dark with Nazism. So this brings out, like Paul, this brings out the greatness. So we can be great, but we have to rise to that. We have to choose it.